Hi, welcome to the School of Reinvention podcast. I am your host, Roger Osorio. I'm a reinvention coach and author of the book, The Journey to Reinvention, How to Build a Life Aligned with Your Values, Passions, and Purpose. I'm extremely excited to be here with Psacoya Guinn, who is a professional actor and arts educator dedicated to using theater as a transformational tool. She's brought theater education to diverse groups, including students in transitional housing shelters, multi-language learners, and adults with developmental disabilities. Psacoya is the founder of Trinity Theatre Group, a nonprofit providing a three-pronged trauma-informed after-school program, leveraging theater as a tool to address the academic, social, emotional, and familial needs of housing insecure and economically disadvantaged students. She holds a Master of Science in Education Entrepreneurship from the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education and is a recipient of the Jacobs Foundation Education Entrepreneurship Impact Prize. In her spare time, she enjoys all things theater and Peloton.
Yes.
You got to tell me about this Peloton because it's I did not expect that part to be in the intro in the way it was. So let's start there. Tell me about Peloton. But first of all, thank you so much for making time to be here, for coming into the studio for the third ever recording here in the studio.
Thank you for having me, Roger. I am so appreciative just to be here and to finally meet you in person.
Yeah.
So Peloton, I got a Peloton in 2021 and I've been obsessed ever since.
Okay.
I think Peloton does a great job at building community for at-home exercise. And I just love, I did a Peloton ride last night and cried because it was just so, I don't know, it sounds cheesy, but it was just so great having, it was my 250th ride. So we call those milestones. And so you get little high fives from the community of people who are riding live with you. And it just felt really great. I don't know these people, but they're good job. Congratulations.
They really do a great job of gamifying the whole experience. I'm part of, I go to Orangetheory Fitness, and it's like Peloton, but at a studio, right?
Yeah.
So they create an entire experience. It feels like you're at a nightclub. Everything is pre-programmed. So you just show up and listen to what the facilitator tells you to do, or the instructor, just like you guys listen to your trainer, and do whatever they say. And there's all these cool little campaigns and games and milestones. When you hit a personal record, they come find you because they can see it in their dashboard. And they're like, oh, Roger just hit a personal record. Let's take a picture with him and hold his brag board up and all of that. And then you get that, and it's great for social. So this gamified thing, I totally get it, how addictive it can be. I've been doing it for, I think, a year and a half now. So 250 rides. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a big milestone. So, you alluded to, obviously this is the first time we're meeting in person, but obviously we've known each other for quite some time. And for those listening in, I teach at the University of Pennsylvania, and I specifically focus on a group of fellows who are part of a grant program, and they get a little extra money to bring their ideas, their education related ideas to life. And Psacoya was one of the students that I had the opportunity to executive coach basically through the program and help you bring that idea from concept to creation. We've known each other for quite some time, and we're going to talk about that venture. And that's why I wanted you on the show, because when you made the decision to go to UPenn, that was, and go back to school, I should say, that was a decision to start launching a transformation in your life. And this podcast is about all things reinvention and transformation. And what I want to do is get a lot of those stories. But what I love about your story in particular is that I'm capturing you in a moment when you are going through a lot of the really tough parts of the story. It's not like you're going to be one of my guests that looks back and says, oh yeah, 10 years ago when I did this. You're like, no, I'm doing it now. And I can share with you exactly what I felt yesterday or what I felt last week. This is helpful for the audience because people listening in are there or a little behind you. And so they are like, oh, it's so good to know what I'm feeling is not wrong. What I'm feeling is okay. And look, there's a way to navigate it. And she just navigated it. So maybe I can too.
Yeah.
So really excited to hear about that. Let's start with the decision to take this leap. So tell us where you were in life. What was going on in your life when the thought or the idea of going back to school came up?
I was working as an artist, mostly doing acting, and I would do teaching artist work on the side. So basically, I would teach theater to, as you mentioned, a diverse group of students, whether they were adults with developmental disabilities, super wealthy children at like the fanciest private schools in New York to kids in Title I public schools or kids living in shelters.
Yeah.
And I love the freelance life. It was fantastic. But it gave me the flexibility to be able to, leave if I needed to do a show or, go out and do my artist life. And I was working in the shelters and it was fun. And then there was one particular shelter in Queens that I was working at, and it changed everything for me. It put things into perspective that I felt like these kids needed more. One particular incident happened where a student, he came and his mom came to pick him up from the shelter, and she got mad at him for attending the after school program because he was supposed to be taking care of his 2 younger siblings.
Yeah.
He was 8. And I was and I don't know, that just really broke my heart, because here is a kid wanting to come to after school, and also just knowing who this kid is, wanting to come to, do theater. And for little boys, it wasn't necessarily the coolest thing. There wasn't many boys in the class, but for him, he participated and he was just so great. And he was basically a leader within the group. So for her, in her own right, to publicly berate him for attending the after school program, to babysit his younger siblings because she has to go to work. It just felt like, man, I wish I was able to do more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
because you can
really
appreciate the
changed it.
challenge.
Yeah.
It's not like anybody was wrong here. It's just
Exactly.
that it's a tough situation. And it sounds like that's what drew you
most definitely
into this.
I actually got on the train on my way home, just looking up rights of students. I literally started Googling the rights of students living in shelters and because I didn't really know much about the problem. I just knew I was coming in teaching theater to kids living in shelters. And I found out about McKinney-Vito. I found out about Milton Hershey School. And that was really what started the journey of me wanting to do more than just a 90-minute after-school theater program.
Yeah. That's really powerful. And I think this is really important for people to hear, because a lot of times when I talk to people who are early on the journey or clients of mine, coaching clients of mine, one of the questions I get is, how do you find that inspiration? How do you find that thing you want to get into or bring to life? And one of the things that I've discovered just from interviewing so many people is that it's not something you set out to do. You didn't say, I'm going to get involved in these 90-minute workshops so that I can find my life's purpose. You got involved in the 90-minute workshops because you were interested in this.
Yeah.
And this was something you wanted to do. They're like, I like this. So I'm just going to go do this. And in the process, because you were so engaged, you were so present, you were so involved, you noticed a problem.
Yeah.
And that problem then all of a sudden caught your attention, and you went down that rabbit hole of starting to do that research, like you said, looking for what are students' rights in this situation, or kids that are in these circumstances, what are their rights and what resources are available. You started asking all those questions that start to put you into get you down this rabbit hole where, well, naturally you come out on the other end and you're you find yourself launching a solution to the problem. You're on that train ride home doing all that Google research. So tell us what happens, give us the next few weeks, the next few months.
It's funny because I planned on attending graduate school right out of undergrad for acting, and ended up not going for a variety of reasons. I think the main one was, for me, if this is very controversial in the world of theater and acting, but if I wasn't going to a top 3 conservatory acting program, so at the time we're talking Juilliard, Yale, NYU, I was waitlisted at those programs. And so I felt like if I wasn't going there, I didn't see the point in going to another drama school or program, which I got into others that are great schools. But for me, I just kind of had that mentality of, if it's not one of the top 3, I'm not going to go. And that was really a hurtful journey to have to, because as artists, you put your whole life into the audition experience, and to get so close, because they're auditioning hundreds, thousands of people, and you make it to the top 30, then you make it to the top 20 or whatever, and then they choose their class of 16 or 18, and then you don't, get it. It started this whole thing for me of feeling like I'm not good enough. And so grad school for me was a very sensitive subject. But I felt like in my prayer life with God, it was just I felt like God was like, you're going to go to grad school. You're going to go to an Ivy League school. And I was thinking, I'm going to go to Yale. When I didn't get in, I was like, it kind of rocked my relationship with God, feeling like I thought, like in my prayer life, you were saying I was going to go to an Ivy League school. But fast forward, it ended up being at Penn for a reason. Like I had if you would have asked me in my 20s that if I was going to go to school to study education.
Graduate School of Education, you're like,
no
what?
way, what?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So it's funny to look back at how that started and how like graduating from Penn, but in the middle of that was I just loved teaching theater. It was a great survival job. I did not want to be a server. I did not want to be a bartender, nanny. Like, and those are great jobs for people. But for me, my thing is if I'm going to be in this city, if I'm not performing, I want to be doing something and making money in a way that is fulfilling. And for me, that was in theater. And I always say, like, through my survival job, which was teaching, I found purpose. And I truly believe that. And leaving that shelter on that day, researching all of the rights of the students, I started thinking about, again, I came across Milton Hershey School and I thought, oh my gosh, what a beautiful idea. You know, you take these kids away and you give them a better life. And then I started researching and I realized, and actually talking to people, you know, who are living in shelters. And I realized that might not be the best decision for them. But I decided to apply to Penn because I realized I couldn't do it by myself.
Yeah.
That mentality that I had with grad school when it came to acting, having that network. The actors that come out of Juilliard or Yale or NYU, it's not like they're fantastic. They just have a network behind them to really help them excel. And I took that same approach applying for graduate school. At the time, Penn, and still a great program. It was like the #1 graduate school of education in the world. A program for entrepreneurs, people who have a problem and they want to create a solution. And I was just captivated by that. So Penn was the only program I applied to because, again, I wasn't going to just apply to grad school just to apply. Did a lot of research. I went on LinkedIn, and anybody who had education entrepreneurship from Penn in their profile, I would just message them, being like, can I get a meeting with you? And so many like students reached out to me, and I did Zoom calls with people. I met with the program director, just trying to learn more about the program to see if it was a fit for me before I even really officially applied. And I did, because I knew there was a problem that I was passionate about solving. I just didn't know the proper solution. I had no idea how to get there.
And that's exactly what the program does. I mean, that's why I got involved, because I teach a part of that. But, you know, what Psacoya is referring to here in this Graduate School of Education program, it's called Education Entrepreneurship. And it is an opportunity for you to learn how to bring an educated-related venture to life. So you're able to learn what those steps are in order to bring an idea to life. And we're going to hear some of those steps in the rest of this conversation. So one of the things that I want to unpack a little bit before we go into that graduate school journey, like you said, if we had asked you in your 20s, you never would have imagined that this would be your path. Now that you've enjoyed that experience and you kind of can reflect and say, oh, I've lived that. I get what, you know, this idea is. Let's talk about this. A lot of times, like, that's what I hear from my guests and people that I interview. And that's what I've experienced too, is that if you had asked me at this point in time, I never could have predicted the path that I ended up taking. And yet so many people are trying to plan the path. You know, like so many people, and no doubt you were probably there too for a moment, just like you had your plan. You know, it has to be one of the top 3 conservatory programs. You know, for me, there was a journey that I had as well mapped out, and it's got to be this way. And for all our attempts to plan anything out, it doesn't work out that way. But it doesn't mean it doesn't work out. It just didn't work out that way. Can you talk about that idea?
Yeah, like my relationship with with God, and it's just so much a part of who I am and how I see my life. And it was very hurtful to, you know, I felt like we were aligned, like me and God were aligned in this dream and this vision. And I will always say, like, God, like, I want to do what you want me to do. Like acting, I feel like you've given me this talent, because there are very few things that I'm good at, but I know acting is one of them that I just know that God has definitely placed me. I know I can walk into a room and audition, and it's happened, and just kill it and do such a great job. And that's not even me like trying to brag. That's just me saying, like, I know that God has given me this specific talent to do these things. So when things just weren't aligning as far as grad school, there was a lot of hurt. And I started like working professionally and things like that, but not on the level that I thought I would be at 25 or 27. And I booked a show Much Ado About Nothing at Texas Shakespeare Festival. And I was Beatrice, which is like a dream role. But I was like, God, I would love if I was doing this show at Chicago Shakespeare, like a bigger, on a higher scale. And it was 2021. So it was in the thick of COVID where no one was really performing. They had us in a bubble because we were recording the show. And I remember being in my actor housing and just like praying and then feeling this sense of God was like, this is going to be your last show for a while. But it didn't feel like a bad thing. It felt like we're going to go on a journey of like something better. And I kept always having this feeling of like, I'm constantly knocking on door A, which was grad school for drama. But like God had door B for me, but I just wasn't ready for door B. But in that moment in my actor housing, it was like, okay, I think I'm ready for a door B, whatever door B is. And that there was this sense of like peace and calm, like it's going to be good. And also it's one thing to, read in the Bible or like say all things work together for your good, but it's another thing to actually have faith to believe that even in the unknown, it's going to work out. And again, this was in the very beginning stages of me transitioning a little bit. And I remember being like, God, I still love acting and I want to act. And it's like, you're going to act. And still.
It's like relax. I got you.
Yeah. It was totally that. And I still have moments. Like literally yesterday, I was just kind of like, man, I wish I was performing.
No, but I hear you, this distinction between it's one thing to have faith after the fact when you see everything working out and you're like, oh, that worked out. Cool. I have faith. It worked out. But that's after the fact. It's another to have it going into the situation while living it, while it's not working out, having faith. And I think that's what I'm hearing in your story and having that peace. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this because the journey to reinvention can be super stressful. And the reason is because it has so much uncertainty. There's just so much uncertainty in the journey to reinvention. No two reinventions are alike. There is no one guide. This is not a guide to reinvention. This book is more focused on developing the courage to reinvent yourself. In fact, if I could retitle it, and maybe I will, it would be called The Courage to Reinvent Yourself. And that is like maybe the only thing you could like say there's a solution here. But there's no one-size-fits-all solution to reinvention, which means there is going to be a lot of uncertainty. Just like in your case, you really thought it was door A. You had so much certainty. Turns out there was a door B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. And you didn't know which one was going to be lined up for you next, but you knew it wasn't A anymore. And you opened yourself up to whatever door opened. And you said, hey, you know what? I'll walk through whatever door comes through. And that changes how you experience reinvention. Because to use your word, you were at peace. And when you're at peace, you don't live that stressful life, even while things are not working out. I really do also believe that having faith, practicing your faith is incredibly important on a journey like this because it can be really stressful without faith. And because we had our faith, like you can now be calm. Look, it's not maybe working out exactly as you thought. And there are bumps on the road, but you're like, these bumps are fine. I'll figure them out. They're figure outable, And so we find solutions. But it's that faith that lets us go through those moments, weather the storm, go through the ups and downs, roll with the punches. Because I have gone through all of that stuff. And sometimes I look back and I wonder, man, how am I not like, just suffering the effects of massive stress? I've been arrested. I've been divorced. I've been fired. I've been laid off. I've gone through all these things. How did that not like eat me, consume me, like just destroy me along the way, make me look 20 years older, make me just have internal health problems, like ulcers and all of that. And the only answer I have is faith. I had faith that it's going to be okay. And I just now have to walk through this door that maybe I opened for myself that, and live and learn. But I know I'm not alone as I walk through this door. So, we'll figure it out because I have God with me. So I think this is a really important thing. And I appreciate you sharing this.
Thank you.
This is an important part. So now you're walking, with faith as you're moving through this. You don't know the answer. You know now it's not A. And that's super important that it's not A because A was so fixed in your mind and you imagine that was the only possibility. And now you're saying, I'm open to other possibilities. So UPenn, you talked about doing some research into the program and all of that. You mentioned education came from the fact that you enjoyed teaching kind of on the side, right? Okay. So then as you're applying to the program, tell us a little bit about that.
I dreamt big. I was like, I'm going to have a school so I thought about like the problem, again, looking at the research. And so much of my research was fueled by laws and like the rights of students. And the majority of the problem for housing insecure students is because they can't get to school when it comes to academic delays, when it comes to even like family dynamics. It's because they just can't get to schools for a variety of reasons. And I thought, what if I made a school where they lived at the school? And I found out about Milton Hershey School, which is like a boarding school for economically disadvantaged students. So not necessarily for housing insecure students, but still kind of the same thing. And in the very beginning, I would say it's Milton Hershey, but it's going to be arts integrated. Because I truly believe in the power of the arts, not just theater, but the power of the arts when it comes to learning. So we'll learn our math and multiplication tables through song, which is how I learned mine. And we will learn like life skills through theater, role playing. Like I was on this kick of like financial literacy and teaching that through theater. So I was just thinking about all of these ideas, and I just thought this would be a great school. And I knew there were no boarding schools necessarily like what I was looking for in this region except for Milton Hershey. And so I just thought that this would be like this great idea. I really loved the solution that I had. It was an amazing boarding school. I thought that it would be, I even started looking at places it could be. I was like, it could possibly be on Roosevelt Island. It could be like somewhere like, I don't know. I was just looking at these random places it could be. No, haven't spoken to one expert in the field. Just these random ideas.
No real estate folks, nothing.
No real estate. Not even thinking about how I would get money to make this happen. Just dreaming.
So tell us, what role did that play? All those dreams. Like, tell us about that moment when you're dreaming, because no doubt someone's listening right now that is like, that's thinking, I'm dreaming right now. And maybe they're scared. Maybe they're holding back on their dreams. So tell us about that experience. Like, what did dreaming do for you in this process at this moment?
Well, the dreaming gave me the courage to do the application for Penn. Because I was just like, this is a problem. I have a solution. I would love for you to help me with this solution. And I wrote about that in my statement of purpose. And the dream was what fueled me to, have the courage to take that step and apply for Penn and write about all of the statistics that's happening. And I leave it to Penn. They're the reasons why I'm here, why I got into the program. But if someone is saying like they have a dream to do something, you won't know unless you try. And that I hold firm to that. Like, I never wanted to be someone who would say, man, I wish I would have done it. At least I tried. And if there's a no, there's a no, but at least I tried. So you won't know unless you try. And that's with anything.
And that dream gave you something to try. And that's why I think that's like super key here, but I love how you word this. You dreamt. It's not like you said, I planned, I designed the perfect design. You just dreamt.
And I did a vision board of it. And I remember on the vision board, it was like, I remember a Different World, which is like a TV show from the 90s that was on the vision board to represent, because I just love that TV show. Even though it was at HBCU, they represented like the different types of Black and brown people. They all came from various different backgrounds.
I love that show. I grew up watching that show.
That was on there. The show called Last Chance U. So it was based off like football players who were usually like D1 athletes, and they got kicked out for whatever reason. They went to a community college to play football to give them like a second chance. And so I thought of it as like a second chance for these kids to like, really, I don't know, get on the right track. I'm not sure what I was thinking at the time. It was just a bunch of pictures of
inspiration.
Inspiration. And I look back and I kind of cringe because I shared it with people. And they were very nice. I shared it with like mentors in my life, and they were like, oh yeah, you want to start a school? Sure.
No, I mean, I think that, but the key here is the dreaming. And I really do believe this is important because, again, the role that the dreaming played in this process, it allowed you to have something to write about, something to apply with. and use that as your reason, as your driving force, as your North Star. It doesn't mean it stays your North Star, as the rest of your story will show. Like you're finding other ways, and you're bringing your ideas to life in other ways. And who knows, this might still happen one day in just a different format or whatever, but you're working on that. But it's so important to dream. And I really love the way you talked about that experience, the vision board, all of those things, drawing on different inspirations. Because I have found in different Q&A events and things that I do, when I learn from people like what their challenges are and questions are about reinvention, it's this like, I don't know what I want. I don't know like what my dream or North Star or direction should be. And you kept it simple. You didn't try to get it perfect. You were just like, let me just dream it up and just see. And who cares? Maybe people thought it was crazy. It doesn't really matter. It served its purpose. Whether you build a school or not, because you might find a better way to solve the problem. But it was a start and it gave you something to apply with. And so I think this is the key takeaway for anyone listening, is that really let yourself dream and just have fun with it. And don't even worry about the limitations. Don't worry about what's possible or not. Don't worry about the laws, the rules, all that stuff. Because who knows? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you might find another way to make it possible, and it'll probably be another idea, but you need to have a first idea.
Yeah. There's this phrase, like, see it before you see it. Like, if you can, like, see it, envision it, and imagine it, like, we have imaginations for a reason, and imagine it. And that, again, propels faith to believe that it's possible and you can, like, see it in reality.
Absolutely. I mean, there's this exercise that I do a few times a week in the morning. It's a priming exercise that Tony Robbins does. I don't know if I ever shared this with you. If I haven't, I got to share this with you. And it's just a 15-minute exercise. But one of the key parts that I love the most is the visioning part of the exercise. He does 3 things. One is like he has you envision 3 things from the past that you're grateful for, but like the full moment, like feel it, like see it, smell it, like taste it, everything, like really be in that moment in your mind. And then from there, he takes you to, now I want you to go forward. What are 3 goals, 3 outcomes that you want for yourself? And then he kind of even gives you like the first one, like maybe is a longer term one. The next one is like a medium term, like 6 months. And the other one is like something I want that you want in a month, in the next few weeks, tomorrow, next week, tomorrow, whatever it might be. And then he goes, I want you to see it fully, like feel it. Like what does everything look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? Describe it, like picture all of it. You do that enough times, your brain is convinced this is reality. And you're just going to find the way, one way or another, to get in closer to that target. And you'll find that, and even if it changes, like it doesn't matter, you're moving. Because in your mind, this is reality. It's no longer a dream. Now it's becoming a reality because of that vision. So I love that. See it before you see it.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, you're going through the application process at this point. And did you apply to any other schools?
No.
Wow. I love it.
I looked at other schools. I looked at Harvard's. They kind of have like an equivalent to the education entrepreneurship program, but I didn't want to move. I love that Penn, it was an executive program.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Stanford had a program that was similar. I didn't want to go to the West Coast. So Penn was just the perfect fit.
Yeah.
And I was at a point where, again, like, God, if I feel like you're leading me in this direction, if this is from you, then it's going to work out. Because I also was like, I was a B student in undergrad, and I'm an actor. Like I'm trying not to call myself an actor anymore. We could talk about, I'm an artist.
There we go.
And so I just assumed that they were education, entrepreneurship, business people, teachers, anything far away from an actor or an artist. And so, I just applied and just thought, if it's meant to be, it will be.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, so you're doing this. What's happening in other areas of your life? This is a big challenge for a lot of people who are considering reinvention. It's like, well, I can't afford to do it, or I don't have the time to do it. And yet then I'm interviewing people who do it, and they have all sorts of circumstances. And, so the good news, it's figure outable. It's a solvable thing. So it's great hearing those stories. Tell us a little bit about other areas of your life. Let's start with like funding yourself. Like, what was going on that end?
That's a really great question, because we're talking about, so this started like percolating in my mind, 2019, 2020, then COVID happens. And then COVID, that was the time where I did all of the dreaming. And then I found out about Penn. My mind, because I'm such a preparer, I was like, I felt very insecure about being an artist. I didn't even have a resume, a work. I only had a professional acting resume. I never had a job that wasn't a freelance teaching job. So I thought, okay, in order to make myself seem a little bit more competitive, I started applying for full-time jobs. And also I wanted to work at a nonprofit, like an arts education nonprofit, to learn the inner workings of one. So even if Penn wasn't a thing, if I could work at a nonprofit where there was a director of development who could mentor me, an executive director who could mentor me. And I landed at where I am now, which is New York Theater Workshop, an off-Broadway theater in the city. I was the education associate at the time. And it ended up like God just really worked it out. And also it was great for me in stability, because when we came back to like in school, like public schools meeting in person, they weren't really letting teaching artists in the building. And when you're a freelance artist, you only get paid when you work. So I wouldn't have been coming back to the same like income that I was making before the pandemic. And so having a full-time job and insurance, that gave me the stability that I needed to be able to be at Penn, but also just to be able to, pursue the things on the side. So yeah, it was more so of me just trying to figure out how to not just be an artist. I was just very insecure about applying as an artist. I just thought educational entrepreneurship, they're looking for people who are teachers or principals or like people already in education. Yeah. And so I was I look now, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have been insecure about that. But I was very insecure about that.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. I could definitely, I mean, I'm on one of the committees for selecting students, and this is always like, oh, wait a minute, like, who's our ideal? And one of the things that we've arrived at is the ideal is not necessarily someone who is, who's already in education. It could be somebody who wants to come into education. And this is, and we have parts of the program, of course, that help you kind of learn a little bit of that side of it, while learning the business side, of course, to bring, venture to life. So, well, I'm glad that that none of that uncertainty stopped you from applying, because then we wouldn't be here today. Yeah. And I don't know where your idea would be. I mean, I have a feeling you would have found another way, because that's what I'm hearing in your story. And for instance, you talk about like how you funded yourself. And what I love about this, there's so many things there to maybe double click on, but one of them is you thought to yourself, where can I find a 2-for-1? I want to make some sort of consistent, steady income. And I also want to be in a position to learn more about the direction that I want to go in. And so you challenge yourself to find a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1. Like, how do I get all of these in one opportunity? And I'm sure if you couldn't, you would have just gotten 2 opportunities. You're like, cool, well, then I'll get one of each. I'll get one that focuses more on the funding and one that focuses more on the learning. But bottom line is, I'm going to get as many of these experiences as possible. And that, I think, is such an important strategy on the journey to reinvention. It's one that I write about in the book. It's one that I've heard so many people share in one way or another, how they found these opportunities to be able to do 2 things at one time. And it is possible. Tell us a little bit about that, because that thinking is really interesting. And I want to learn more about how that unfolded for you.
Yeah, it goes back again. Door A is closed. No matter how much I wanted to open, it's done. I told myself I have to fully commit to, this new route that I believe God has taken me on. And I felt like it was grad school. And so, again, having that insecurity of feeling like I'm not the ideal candidate for this program, how can I make myself the ideal candidate? Get a job, a full-time job. And I got one in like the arts education space. And then just trying to fully commit to this new route, this new way. Yeah, I don't know. It's bringing up emotions talking about this, because it was like a while ago, but I just told myself to really commit to like this new door. And can you repeat the question? Now I'm coming with the emotions. No, that is not what I thought would happen.
No, but I'm glad that you are, because I mean, I can appreciate that. I can't talk about my journey without having moments where I just start to like choke up and tear up on a talk on stage. It doesn't really matter where I am. Sometimes it's in a Q&A. Someone's just asking me a question, and wow, like I'm telling the story. I'm like, oh yeah, so I went through something similar, and I start telling the story, and then I'm like, oh. Like I can't even get the words out, but it's because it was real, and so I appreciate that. Tell us a little bit about the emotions. Like, where is it coming from? Like, what's triggering them?
Because there's a part of me that still wishes. Okay, I'm a planner. By 30, I thought that I would have my Broadway debut. So the dreaming part is not hard for me. Literally by 30, I was like, I'll have my Broadway debut in either A Midsummer Night's Dream or like some Shakespeare show alongside Denzel Washington. I was like, he'll be in his 70s by then, and he'll probably want to be doing like smaller things. 8 shows a week is not smaller, but I'm a planner. And so when it didn't work out, again, having the faith to believe that God knows better than me, he will work things for my good. It takes it's so hard to believe that. And I'm having to believe that every day. Every day I tell myself, God, you know what's best for me. You have the best intentions for me. And it's just hard working at a theater company because our staff is only 40 of us, and we do such big work for it just to have a staff of 40. And there's artists in and out of the building. So our office space is where our rehearsal space is. And so there's artists constantly coming in and out of the building, and they're doing a reading of the show right now. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I would love to be in that. But having to remind myself, I'm here for a season. I'm here for a reason. And I love the work that I do at the workshop. I love it. But just, I'm still trying to have the faith to believe that God has not forgotten about that dream of acting and performing.
Yeah.
And that's where the emotions are coming up because I am here not necessarily talking about, performing. I'm here talking about something I love, education and entrepreneurship, something I love as well. But as we're talking about the journey, it's just bringing up those moments. And what's been helpful is Sam Neill, an actor, he was in Jurassic Park. He talked about how he no longer calls himself an actor because when you're an actor or you're a singer or you're a dancer and you're not doing those things, it brings up this sense of, well, what am I? Because it's such gig work. You can go spans of time without doing something. And so he says, now I'm an artist or acting is what I do. And it helps. That language does help. And for me, I'm trying to do that. I'm just trying to get to a place where it doesn't bring up bitterness or sad emotions for me, and embrace where I am now, because I am happy to be where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
I love what I do. I love that, I'm working on a nonprofit that I truly believe that will help so many students, and not just housing insecure students, migrants in this city. There's a homelessness migrant issue that is happening in New York City that is out of control. And I truly believe that what I'm working on is going to help that.
Yeah.
So I just have to remind myself of that. Yeah. And so those emotions just came from that place.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, along any journey to reinvention, there are times where we have to let go of a dream for a little while, maybe forever, maybe for a little while. We don't really know at the end of the day. He knows, but we don't know. In that moment, we might have to let it go and just have faith that it will come back if it needs to come back, or it won't, because maybe it doesn't, and that's fine too. And it sounds like this is what this is for you. You had to let go of this one dream in order to create space for another. And you still want that dream to come back at some point. And you're and I think that by having it in your mind, giving it a little spot, it's not like you've completely kicked it out. You're it's got a little spot that it lives in your heart. It has a little spot in your heart. It probably never will completely go away. You'll always have an eye or an ear out for it, when that opportunity comes up. Yeah. And I think that's the key. But I love this. I think this is important because there will be moments on the journey to reinvention where you do have to say goodbye to something that's good, maybe even in your life. The way we met at UPenn is because I'm focused on this coaching role, on this executive coaching role in the program. So I'm not actively teaching. I'm not teaching a class like I used to be teaching at Penn. And so when I made that decision, I felt I was coming off of my best teaching year. And in terms of student performance and how they were doing, the pitch competition at the end of the year, right? So it was one of my advisees, one of my class that won the whole thing. So I was like, wow, this is what a great year. I was really able to guide everybody. Everyone got to the finish line. Everyone launched their experiments, which was, how important that is in the program. I was just I can't wait for next year. I know exactly what areas I need to fix. Yeah. And as good as this was, I know it can get even better, and I can't wait to work on that. And then all of a sudden I was faced with this not difficult decision, just a decision to start moving in a direction that really matters to me, that was calling me. And it's not like I was moving away from something I didn't like. I was like, oh, I have to say goodbye to this thing that I really do like. And it's not going to be easy. And I remember having that call with the director, Jenny, and I said, this is a really difficult call, and this is a really difficult thing to say, but this will be my last teaching year, and I just came to this decision, and I know it's last minute because we're almost at the end of the semester and all that, or the program, or this cohort, and we need to get ready for the next one. And she was very understanding, a little bummed, which I appreciated, but also understanding, which is what made that great. But what was really cool was, like, we have to act with faith that these things are going to be okay when we decide this. And what happened, I could never have predicted. Jenny then says, okay, but I'm not going to let you quit. And I'm like, yeah, but I am quitting. She's like, no, and I'm like, what? I mean, this is not an argument. Not like we're not. This is not a negotiation. She'll be listening to this because we're going to send this to her, and it's going to be funny for her to hear this. But she said, no. What I mean is, I want to keep you on the payroll. You're still on the team. You're just going to be like on the bench for now. Mm-hmm. Focus on you. Do what you got to do for your business, for the School of Reinvention, bringing that to life, and I'll be in touch. We'll reconnect in a few months. There will be something. And then, like, I forget how many months later, I get a call from her, and she's like, hey, let's schedule some time to speak or whatever. And so we do. And she had this, fellowship program that she was applying for the grant for. And then she would need somebody to coach. And she thought, I know Roger wants to coach students like more than anything. So let's bring him back in. This could be the perfect opportunity. And it aligned with the direction I was going in. And I'm like, I could never have imagined this outcome. But I did have to have faith that I had to say goodbye to something. I had to let go of this thing that was really good in my life and that really mattered to me, just like this dream really matters to you. You've let it go. And such an important thing to talk about for anybody who is like, but I don't hate my job. And that's like, that's okay. Like, you don't have to hate your job in order to move in a new direction. You just have to feel called to move in a new direction.
Exactly.
And then that's what it takes. And it doesn't mean, F you, old job, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, no, it's not like that. Like, it could be like, I'll miss you dearly, old job. Like, you played such an important role in my life, and I'm going to leave, and it's going to be super sad, and I'm going to be heartbroken. Mm-hmm. But I also know that this area is now calling me, and I got to go this way. So I'm going to go this way. And I feel like you've heard this call.
Yeah. I also want to say, like, there's this phrase, like, passion doesn't always equal purpose. And, like, I'm very, like, for example, I'm very passionate about, like, acting, but that doesn't necessarily mean, like, the purpose that I had was like, oh, I'm going to be a professional actor, and I'm going to be like this light in the dark entertainment business. Like, people, we really got to stop saying stuff like that. And when it comes to, like, Vacation Bible School, because they're like, the entertainment industry is so dark, you gotta bring the light in there. And you go in with this, like, well, for me at least, I was going in with this, like, I am here to be the light of Jesus and this company, this theater company, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, girl, calm down. So going back to, like, if you like something, you're passionate about something, just really, like, having those moments with yourself, or, whatever it is that you do to, I don't know, figure out what's next for you, realize that it's not necessarily, it doesn't mean that it's always like your purpose, the thing that you're set to do. Mm-hmm. So I was good at acting, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was the thing I'm purposed in life to do professionally or in life.
That's a really interesting distinction. I don't think I've heard that. Can you say that again? The passion doesn't always equal your purpose.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting idea. And I like what you just said about, just because you're good at something or passionate about it, let's even use that one, passionate about it, doesn't mean that it will necessarily be the fulfilling purpose in your life. It could play another role. It's still a fulfilling role, just may not be the purpose fulfilling version of, role in your life. I was at an event recently, networking event, and somebody had asked me, like, what about doing the things that you're really good at in order to then earn the income to create, and then one day be able to go into what your purpose is and your passions are and all of that, and focus in on your strengths. And I've been thinking a lot about this. this is a developing idea. So here we are developing it right now in this conversation. But, when there's like something that we're really good at, this idea, like I should just do this and make a lot of money and then move into the thing that I'm passionate or that is aligned with my purpose, or both, if it happens to be. But I think that when we pursue a skill, and if it's not something that we are passionate about, if it's not something that we're so interested in, then it can be draining.
Yeah.
And that is not good either. Like, I mean, that will take away from a fulfilling life. Maybe I'm making a lot of money and I could be very wealthy or very rich as a result. But then again, was that the goal? That's something that I've been thinking a lot about, because it's advice that's given. Some people are like, oh, don't follow your passions. First, follow your skills, your strengths, go make a lot of money, and then follow your passion. But I'm kind of like, I don't know. That really depends. Like, you got to be careful with that advice. That device is a double-edged sword. It could work out if you're holding it the right way. It could really work out bad, or it could harm you if you're holding it the wrong way. And I think that's like, so this idea of passion doesn't equal purpose is like taking it another step. Even something that you're passionate about may not even be your purpose. And that's okay too. And I think that's like taking it, we're moving beyond like what I'm good at, even though I don't like it, or I'm not passionate about it, to I am passionate about this. And let's say maybe I'm even a little good at it or good enough at it to do something with it. And then there's like, what I'm purposeful, like what is my purpose, and making that distinction. So it's just something like that you kind of opened up in me and got me thinking about. Any thoughts there? I know I rambled on. I'm not sure I even made sense.
No, I feel like I completely agree with you. And it's not one size fit all. Like my former roommate, she made a lot of money as a graphic designer. And like she bought our apartment. Like she was great. Like I moved in with her and she decided to quit and become an art teacher at a school. A huge pay cut. But she was no longer satisfied with the job that she had. It was draining. She never had a personal life because she was working all the time. So for her, it was like, yeah, I'm really good at this thing, but it's not fulfilling. Yeah. So she left that to be an art teacher. And then like the other half of the passion doesn't necessarily equals purpose is, for me at least, I feel like it's given me the tools I need to find purpose. I do believe that I've been called to serve housing insecure, economically disadvantaged students, specifically in New York City.
Yeah.
And like I look back and I'm like, I tried to go back home to Alabama when grad school wasn't working out, my career wasn't working out, but I kept finding myself here. God kept bringing me back here. And so I look at now, okay, specifically for these students in this city, using theater, something I am hugely passionate about, getting that experience. So using that passion to gain experience in the education field and also introduce me to purpose has been really, really helpful. But again, like all of this, there's no one size fit all for anybody. Yeah. So it's like what works for you works for you. So all you can do is just kind of like take advice from people, but trust that what's for you might not be for someone else.
Yeah. But I think if we take a step back to some of the things you said, start by dreaming.
Yeah.
What are your dreams? Not somebody else's, but what are your dreams? And what do you feel called to do? Because again, that's going to be different for everybody. And what you're called to do. Your friend, the graphic designer, was called to teach art. Mm-hmm. That's what she felt that would be right for her. Listening to those things, I think that's what I'm hearing is key here. It's like allowing yourself to dream. What are your dreams? Like your real dreams, not the dreams that have been kind of imposed by someone else, because that happens. Like sometimes I get excited about someone else's success and then I think I want that. And then I make that my dream for a moment, but those don't tend to last very long. Nope. I set goals around them. I tend to not perform them so well. And it's for a reason, because they were not really mine and they were never mine. They were somebody else's and I just kind of borrowed them, but they don't do anything. So it's really important that we dream like our dreams and really allow ourselves to dream that with all the permission in the world, no holding back, however crazy it might sound. Like I'm going to have a school and you know what, screw real estate, screw whatever funding. I don't know what those problems are, but I'm going to have a school and that's it. And I'm going to solve this particular problem. You had that dream, then you had that calling. You noticed that problem in in this other job you had. You noticed that problem, that wait a minute, that 8-year-old who got in trouble for not going home to take care of his siblings because he wanted to stay and do an art program after school. This is a problem here. Like something needs to be resolved here. And you paid attention and then you were called to do something about that, and now you're on that path. And so, yeah, you're right. Like there is no one size fits all. And that's, I think, how we started this conversation, that no two reinventions are alike. There is no one size fits all solution or goal for anybody. And it's really important that we listen to ourselves, just as you have, so that we can find what it is that we want to do. And I think the other key thing I'm hearing in your story, like a theme, as I zoom out on it, is that there is no necessarily like long-term plan. There's a vision you have.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there's only one path to get there. It's like you said, you even had a very different vision at one point, and you said goodbye to that vision for a little while. Like you put it aside, you let it go for a little while, and you gave up on, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but you said path A, not going to work out. That's fine. I'm opening myself up to other paths, and there's other ways to get there. When I hear your story, I hear that as each moment comes along, you make the decision that makes the most sense for you in that moment. Yeah. What feels right for you, that's what you make a decision, versus saying, I'm going to plan out the next 4 steps.
Yeah. I always, I feel like I'm talking in like a lot of metaphors. I don't see life through metaphors, but they're just coming up. But in the sense of, to the point of like taking the next step, like I always remind myself, you don't have to know the whole staircase, because again, I was such a planner that didn't serve me well. Because when I wasn't on Broadway at 30 with Denzel Washington, it was just kind of like, and I was serious about that. Like I was like, this is going to happen. And so
Denzel, if you're listening, just know you're going to get a call.
And so when, I again, step by step, you don't have to know the whole staircase. Just take the next step when you feel called to take the next step. And again, having the faith to believe that God is, or whatever higher power or thing that you entrust your faith into, believing that it will serve you good, it's for your good, and all things will work together for your good.
Let's talk about your definition of success. How have you defined it? How do you define it? And anything in between that you want to share?
It's just so simple. I always said, like, I just want to be happy and be able to support myself. I feel like that's every artist's like goal of success. Again, like it would be great to be like in a big blockbuster film, but like as long as I'm able to do the things I want to do. And so that was my definition of success. Now it's still the same. I just want to be happy and be able to support myself and do the thing that I love to do. So again, that's, pursuing this nonprofit. But success for me isn't A, B, or C. It's more of like, do I feel fulfilled in what I'm doing? No matter what that is.
I like that. What I'm hearing is it's life on your terms, whatever those terms are.
I like that.
In that moment of your life. Because as you go through different seasons of your life, your terms might be different. Yeah. And as long as you're in alignment with what matters to you in that moment and what you want in that moment, you're good. Although I think Denzel was part of your definition of success by 30. So he was an older definition. But it sounds like, when you were younger, you had these more fixed, more rigid definitions of success. Like by 30, Broadway debut with Denzel Washington, he'll be in his 70s, doing smaller things. You had it all mapped out and figured out. And now you've shifted into, it's more fluid, it sounds like. And as long as it's what you want and it fulfills you, then that is success for you.
Absolutely.
What role do finances play? Like when you think about money and success, talk about that in any way you want, whatever that means to you.
Oh boy. Okay. Money, I'll say this, money is important for me, which kind of sounds like a contradiction of this like fluid lifestyle. So for me growing up very quickly, money was never a thing because my parents it's not that they had a bunch of it, but there was never like, we can't do this because we don't have money. And I realized I'm from Alabama, a small town. So when I came to New York, my first 3 years, my parents footed the bill. And I didn't realize that was a privilege until I moved to New York and I met people here and they're like, I have 5 different jobs. And the teaching artist work that I was doing, like my life didn't depend on the gig because I knew I had that backup plan of my parents, as opposed to other teaching artists who I knew, they were like, they canceled the class? Oh no. But for me, it was they canceled the class or whatever. And so now the way I see money, now that I'm more independent, 100% independent, it is important because it's like I live in New York City, which is so expensive. I'm starting a nonprofit, which doesn't mean that, that there's no money, but it's different.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's different. And so I think about it all the time. I got into a bunch of debt to start a new life as an entrepreneur. And I think about it often. I think about that often, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
So money it's not a touchy subject, but it's something I'm very aware of. And it's something that I just want to make sure I'm comfortable and I'm responsible and not, I'm being smart. I'll keep it at that.
Yeah. I appreciate you being so open about that. I mean, I hear you. It's a weird topic in the sense that I think it changes too over time and how we see it. And it sounds like for you, it did. There was a moment where, you had support from your parents, financial support, which allowed you to experience New York in a very different way and experience your career and the work you were doing in a very different way than some of your friends and colleagues who were, also on a similar journey. And then now you're, that you're 100%, taking care of yourself. You're now seeing some of the differences as well and experience it. And then I appreciate you saying like that. Yeah, bringing a nonprofit to life. Okay, so what are the financial prospects in that, right? Like, there is a very serious cap to how much you can make in a situation like that. Best case scenario, you're the executive director and you give yourself obviously a salary, but how high could that salary realistically and responsibly go?
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we do know that there are some nonprofits that where it's unresponsibly and irresponsibly too high and not right. It sounds like that's also not going to be aligned with your values in the end.
Yeah.
So, because you're so mission focused and driven that will cost the mission. So you're like, no. So there will be a cap on that. How do you think about the next few years financially? How do you see, or even like the next year? Like, I don't want to go too far out, but basically the near term is what I'm referring to. How do you see that? Because I know that there are a lot of listeners who might be thinking, how does one navigate, rationalize, think about those the next 6 months, the next year, when it comes to very uncertain income or most likely not a lot of income, like, and yet there's this hardwiring that we've been given. Many of us have been given that our worth comes from how much we earn. And so it's like, I know I'm still battling that, and I've been on this journey for a long time, and yet that still has a little spot in my brain that kicks in every now and then, and I really try to fight that off. But yeah, I just want to understand, like, how are you thinking about the next year or so as you look out and say, I know what I want to do, but I also know that it will not bring me the income of some of my classmates from UPenn who are launching for-profit ventures that will have no cap on their earning potential.
Yeah, most definitely. So when I first applied, got accepted, and knew what I was taking on as far as finances, I said, okay, when you graduate from this program, you have got to hustle. So for the next 3 years, I still have my full-time job. I'm pursuing this nonprofit venture, but I'm also still teaching freelance on the side. So the schedule that I have is hard, it's rough, but it's what I have to do because like debt scares me. I had student loans from undergrad, but it was just like nothing. Like it wasn't a thing. But like being in a different financial situation as far as debt goes is really scary for me. And I just told myself, you have to like really work. Like I'm in a position, I don't have kids, I don't have a partner or anything. I can devote all of my time to just burning, like getting as much cash in to like, burn this debt off. And then to anyone who is like thinking about, like money there are so many ways to be creative. I know I'm going to make it sound easy, but there are like just so many ways that you can make money. Whether it's like, I was a dog walker, I did nannying, like I'm still doing those things like on the side. It's not bringing a lot of money, but like they add up. Like the more little gigs that you do, it adds up. And I found that I actually enjoy dog walking more than nannying. So, just being flexible, again, I'm saying this from a place of privilege in a way because I don't have much I'm only responsible for myself, so I don't really have much.
But you speak for someone in a similar situation that is also like, maybe doesn't have a family yet and all of that. And we need all the stories, right? Because everyone's on a different journey or has a different set of circumstances. And there are people with your circumstances, but maybe holding themselves back, you know, and that's where I think your story is so important, even though it may not apply to somebody who right now might have a family with a few kids or whatever the situation might be. That may not apply perfectly. Although I bet there's still things that we can borrow from your story.
Yeah, there's just so much, I just call it gig work that you could do. Like there's even, I don't know if they're still operating, but I was able to babysit kids while parents went into auditions, like for like 30 minutes to an hour. There was one lady who, I actually need to check in with her because she paid me very, very well. I would sit in her car. She would commute from Jersey into the city for auditions, like the auditions that were in person. And I would sit in her car with her kids in her like fancy Range Rover with her kids while she did her callback for just like 30 minutes to an hour. And then and it was usually me like driving around the block because parking is ridiculous. So like, and that would be like $50, $100 for 30 minutes, like little small things. Yeah. If you're hungry enough to, make that extra money on the side, you have to be humble enough to do things like that, like dog walking or, I mean, I'm sure there are other, catering is something that I just couldn't get into, but like there are other ways.
But you found some things like driving a car around the block for an hour or so, which, I mean, I think that you're so right. Like this is a really interesting moment. I think there were many jobs before like this to some extent. It's just that now with the internet, with social media, with technology, it's so much easier to find these opportunities. Before you kind of had to be in the right place at the right time to know that person who needs someone to be in the car in the Range Rover driving around the block for a few hours. But now someone can post that request.
Exactly.
And you could say, I just read your request. Hey, here's me. Like, let me know if we can talk. Like that matching opportunity exists more now than it ever has. So I think that, you're right. There's so many opportunities. And that's key what you said about we have to be humble enough to take some of these opportunities. I think that's a big one that holds a lot of people back on the journey to reinvention from just stories I've read, people I've interviewed, like things that I've learned, objections that I get from clients or others. Like, it's just that there's this hesitation to do things that seem almost beneath them because of their degree, their status in life and all that. And I get that. Like, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do what we have been programmed to believe is a step backwards. That seems wrong. That seems backwards.
Even having this degree from Penn now, I have moments like that because there's an expectation that, so if I am babysitting and they're like, you have an Ivy League degree, and they don't mean harm by it, but it's just kind of like, and they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, what is your plan? And the question is, the subtext under the question is like, why are you here? Like, you just graduated from an Ivy League institution. Why are you babysitting my kid? But it's just, I remind myself.
Because it's your plan. It's what you're doing for you. And I think that's the key right there. It's when I had graduated from undergrad, graduated with 2 degrees, one in finance and one in international business. I was able to get a job in a leadership development program at a major corporation. And it was such a cool role to have and cool opportunity, very competitive, all that good stuff. I was parking cars to make extra money to pay off my student loans more quickly. I mean, talk about humbling, because like I thought, like it felt like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm in this really cool program. I busted my butt in university and all that. But I learned through that experience that these things are not connected. Like, this is not like, oh, you didn't do this well enough and that's why you're parking cars. No, that's not it. These have nothing to do with each other. Parking cars is part of another goal I have, which is to get rid of the student loan debt more quickly. And I know that this is what it's going to take. And so this is a good idea for that particular problem. And it was, because I was able to make it work. I had the support of my manager at the time, who was just incredibly supportive of that. And I was able to do it. And I honestly loved it. I mean, I think a lot of people think, oh, that must have sucked. Those must have been some rough years. I mean, it was rough only in the way that obviously physically it's tiring, in the sense that on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, I was parking cars. Thursday night, I start work at 8, finish at 5. And then I drive right to the restaurant, work from 6 to about midnight or 1 in the morning, wake up at 6, so sleep just a few hours, go back to work, office all day, 5 o'clock, do the same thing. Friday nights go later till 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then Saturday I get to sleep in, I guess, and then go back to work at 5 p.m.
Yep.
And so, like that was hard in the sense that, I had to keep myself physically strong to do that, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I found fun in cool challenges in that work, like, can I challenge myself to run a little faster, like in the parking lot to get to a car, especially when the lots are bigger?
Yeah.
Like, can I do a really great sprint? And I played soccer like on Sundays, the one day off I had every week. So for me, I'm like, cool, those sprints help me out on the field. So like I can use them on the pitch. But I had so much fun. I had fun talking to people, like creating little challenges for myself. Like I used to, one of my favorite challenges was to start a conversation with someone as they're coming out of their car. And my little game was, how long can I keep them from going into the restaurant? Assuming there wasn't a rush, like a massive rush.
Yeah.
So as long as it was manageable. And it was like my way of saying, of testing out conversational skills.
Yeah.
And like, can I do this? Like, I mean, let's face it, I'm already at a disadvantage because a lot of people may not care to talk to the valet. It's just like, give me the ticket.
Exactly.
I'm going to go inside because I'm here for dinner or to hang out with my friends or whatever. I'm not here to talk to the valet.
Yeah.
So if I can get someone to talk to me, by the way, biggest win ever on that was someone came out from the restaurant during their meal, I guess maybe when they were just having drinks afterwards or whatever. And she saw the chair next to me and I was sitting and it was a dead moment. Everyone's mostly inside the restaurant at this point. My buddy was, he stepped away to go get some food. So I was just kind of watching the lot and she took his chair. She said, can I sit in that chair? And I thought it was a little weird because I'm like, well, you're going to park cars with me? Like, but all right, like, yeah, sure, sit. And she sits down and I'm like, why are you sitting down here? Like, isn't it like warmer inside and better inside?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, like, and she just, I guess, wasn't having a nice time with her friends or whatever.
Yeah.
And she wasn't feeling it. But she goes, no, I just remembered our conversation from like when we pulled up and just seemed like it'd be more interesting to talk to you. So I'm out here for a little bit if you don't mind. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's a dead period. And my buddy went to go get a meal. So I'm cool. Like I wouldn't mind the company, but it was like wow. It worked.
It worked,
yeah. And it worked in a way I never would imagine. But see, those things like keep you in those moments, like whatever it is, dog walking, driving a car around. Even in those things, we can find a little bit of joy, a little bit of fun, a little bit of challenge, a little bit of fulfillment. There could be something there. But it's on us to do that.
Yeah.
Like that's not gifted to you when you park cars. You can also have a miserable experience parking cars and then look back and say, those are the worst 2.5 or whatever years of my life having to do that. I hated that work. I hated those 8 hours, 3 days a week that I had to do. Hated those. Could have said that, I suppose. I could have lived it that way, but no, I don't want to live it that way. But I hear you. It's hard because if we see it connected to our degrees, connected to our status in other realms of life, it feels like, no, but this makes no sense. How dare I? And especially if somebody points it out to you, you're like, oh, damn.
Yeah. It's just remembering, like you said, it's not connected and it's just for a season. I'm telling myself this is just for a season. I've given myself 3 years of this. And the thing is, too, I'm in a place where I'm doing things I like to do. There are things I've done before and it's things I like to do. Like on Saturday, I'll be spending all day because we have our final performance. So I also teach adults with developmental disabilities Shakespeare. All day Saturday is our dress rehearsal and Sunday is the performance. Would I much rather have my Saturday and Sunday off? Absolutely. But I'm doing something I want to do and I'm getting paid to do it. So I directed the show, I taught them, and we're going to do a show on Sunday. So
and and in the moment, I'm going to guess here, but it's fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like having a lot of fun, Absolutely. There's a moment in the week where you're probably thinking, oh, I wish I had the weekend off.
Yes.
But once you're there, right, you're like, I'm having a blast.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And you know that difference. I feel the same way. Like there's certain things that I do where I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't committed to that. Or I wish but I also know, except once I get there, I'm going to be so glad I'm there, and I'm going to be so in it, and I'm going to be the last one to leave. I'm going to be the first one there and the last one to leave because I'm so into it. So, I just remind myself, all right, so complain all you want right now, but we're going to go have fun in a few days. So we'll be having a blast, and it'll be great, and it'll be fine. Now, I think this is really important because who knows? And, you mentioned it's for a moment, but also maybe it's not for a moment. It's for a reason.
Yeah.
It's for a reason that matters to you. And that's all that matters. It's your reason. Who cares if someone doesn't understand it?
Yeah.
It's your reason. I mean, when I reinvented myself the first time, I went from national account sales to, I was selling commercial refrigeration, and I went to becoming a math teacher. There were people who said, that's backwards. Like, you'll make less money. Teaching is less respected, less prestigious than a corporate job or whatever. Like you're going backwards. And of course, don't get me wrong, I thought that before anybody said that too. I go, couldn't this be seen as going backwards and all that? But it felt right for me. It's what I wanted. And so at some point I just had to make a decision. I go, this is for me. This is not for anybody else. So maybe for you, like, that's cool, but it's for my reason. So this is my plan. And this is what I know and believe to be the right path for me right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to walk it. And so here we go, let's walk some dogs. Let's tutor some kids. Let's teach math. Let's do whatever it is. Let's park cars. This is what's right for me right now. And it's part of my plan to get to what I want. And I have my reasons why I'm doing it. And my gosh, looking back, there's nothing I would change from my journey. If I could go back in time, I would not say, ooh, let's add some more funding here, or let's figure this part out. No, I'd actually prefer to do it without the funding because I got to do all these really great things and find new meaning, new purpose in those activities too.
Yeah.
And I had a blast. Doing it. Sometimes people ask me, like when I was at IBM and I would speak in front of audiences, some people would ask me, how are you so comfortable on stage? Like, just, we're throwing you curveballs and like, it doesn't even faze you. Like, you look so almost like you planned for all the curveballs, except we know you didn't. There's no way you could have. And I go, oh, it's because I spent 4 years in the classroom teaching. What? But how does that help you be comfortable on stage? Well, when you're a teacher in front of 30 students that don't want to be in the room with you, let me tell you, you learn how to think quick on your feet and how to speak well and how to be able to, and how to communicate with influence, with authority, with comfort, with confidence. You have to. There's no way to make it through that experience, especially when you have middle school and high school students. Like, they will call you out on everything. You're missing confidence one day, it will be exposed, So that's where I learned it. So my advice, you want to learn how to speak like that, the way I do, or what you just saw, teach, become a teacher. Oh, but I can't do that because that's like going backwards. Like, I'm like, well, I'm just saying, you asked. I'm telling you exactly what I did to help me become such a comfortable speaker, such an effective speaker. And it was from doing that. Like, I will never remove that. I would never go back in a time machine and say, let me fix that one part and give myself a better job or something that made more money. No, it had nothing to do, because it wasn't about the money. It was about developing a skill, improving myself. And I knew not only would I find this work fulfilling, but it would improve my ability to do something later that I might want to do.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about maybe a belief or two that powers you today, an empowering belief. And I'll even give you a heads up. I also want to hear about a limiting belief that holds you back today. But I want to hear about one belief that powers you today that really, like, wow, because I believe this, I get to kick butt. And then there's this other belief where, like, gosh, this belief will slow me down. Like, and it still does. I'm working on it, but it's slowing me down.
The empowering belief is, I tell myself this every day: God is good. God does good. God works all things together for my good. That gets me through it every day. The limiting belief is, I can't do it. I'm not enough. Like, some of this realm of like, I'm not enough. So they kind of like go against each other. If God is good, God does good, God works all things together for my good. The other belief is, but he'll do it for other people, not you. Like, you're not good enough. And so
you're not the one.
Yeah, I'm not the one, And so that's like the thing that gets me. there are moments where like it's not an issue, but there are moments where a lot now as I'm on this like new journey of like entrepreneurship is hard. I tip my hats off to anybody. It's like acting in a way, you know, you audition, you put yourself out there, you give them your baby, whether it's the monologue or the sites you prepared. Same thing as an entrepreneur, you're giving people your baby, this venture you've created, and saying, hopefully we'll partner together, you'll accept my baby. And sometimes there's a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
And I do think acting, there's just rejection in general as an artist, as an actor. It's prepared me for this life as an entrepreneur. But it's different in the way of like constantly putting time and effort and energy. Because like as an actor, it's like I would do my acting classes, you know, audition. But my work ethic as an entrepreneur completely like 10 times more than that of when I was pursuing acting full time. Like I live, sleep, and eat this venture. Like one of my friends, it was actually a really because he doesn't give compliments often, but he was like, I shared with him a Google Doc of like, you know, just different ideas of the curriculum that I had. And he could see it was like edited at like 5 a.m. And he was like, you really are into this? And I was like, yeah, because this is what I love to do. So yeah, that's the empowering and limiting things I tell myself.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And how do you, when you hear that voice saying that to you on a given day, how do you push back?
I have the courage to just take the next step, even if it doesn't work out. Say I send an email to someone I really would love to, you know, test Trinity Theatre Group with, and don't get a response or don't get the response I wanted. At least I tried. You put yourself out there, and you just got to keep taking the next steps, because I believe someone will say yes eventually. Like, I don't know, I just have a belief that they'll say yes eventually. So even if it's not right now, eventually it'll happen. So when that voice like is saying things like, you know, it's not for you, or got to do all these things for other people, there is that other part that is like, eventually it'll happen.
And that's great, because you have a belief, an empowering belief that directly contradicts this. And while the other one also contradicts your belief, they do go back and forth a little bit, but you have one that does fight back, and you can always activate that one and maybe scream it a little more loudly, you know, just to make sure you shut the other one up for a little while in that moment. And so I can definitely appreciate that. Let's talk about a moment that almost broke you, or maybe that did break you. Like a big stumbling block, perhaps. Something like where you were like, wow, that was one of the biggest setbacks.
So again, after being waitlisted at, like, I'm trying to like put it in context of the fact that like, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't getting into, you definitely couldn't tell me I wasn't getting into Juilliard, because I was like, I'm here. Like, I wasn't surprised when I got the email. So there's hundreds of people there to be selected to stay at the end of the day. I was like, Mom, we're staying. And of course, we got our number that we stayed. And then you're invited back. They invite like 30 something people out of the thousands audition to, you know, come take classes, meet other students. I was accepted into that. I'm leaving the weekend thinking I am in. Same thing with Yale as well, and NYU. I left those weekends. The weekends were back to back, and you're seeing the same people at the Juilliard weekend, at the NYU weekend, at the Yale
doing
weekend.
The same thing you're doing.
The same thing. And there's this thing of like, we are the chosen ones. So we are going to go to at least one of the 3 schools. And when I got the email, it literally said, congratulations, you've been waitlisted. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Congratulations to who? Like,
exactly. Why?
To the person who did not get waitlisted?
Exactly. Like, why am I being like
the one who took my spot? Like,
right? And then like we talked to each other. Again, we're at the Yale, Juilliard, NYU. So there was this one girl, she got into Yale and Juilliard. And so I was thinking, I didn't ask her, but I had like someone else being like, is she gonna choose Yale? Because thinking like they'll choose me if she goes to Yale. Yeah. She ended up going to Yale, but they chose someone else. So all of that to say, that broke me, because I worked on that audition for 2 years. Because you go in and you do a monologue, and you do like 2 monologues, and you sing a song, and for 2 years, and then you get so close and it didn't work out. And as I'm saying this out loud, I'm like, whatever. But like at the moment, at that time, I felt like I couldn't be an actor. It was as if they were telling me, and they weren't. It was as if I took it as if like, sorry, you're not good enough to be an actor. And then I went back the next year because I was like, I was waitlisted. Surely I'll get in the second time around. Roger, I went back the next year. I didn't even get a call back. I didn't even make it past like the first, when the hundreds of people audition, then you make it to the second round. Didn't even make it to that. And I was like, you just saw me. Like, it's not like you don't know who I am. You just saw me. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But I think that was the beginning of God being like, nope, for whatever reason, drama school is not for you. I have something else for you.
Yeah.
And and like my mom, like when I cry, she cries. And then when she cries, it makes me cry more because I'm sad that she's crying. And my dad was just like, are you okay? Like, what can I do? And his way of like consoling is like gift giving. So he's like, you want to go shopping? And I'm like, but it was like really heartbreaking. My mom always refers to like the way I cried because it was just such grief.
Yeah. Yeah, because based on what you shared earlier, you had this very specific definition of success, this very particular goal by 30.
Yep.
And this, no doubt, was one of the most important steps along that journey to get to 30 and to get to that definition of success. And now this part didn't happen, which means all the other parts don't happen. So then how do I get there? How do I get on stage, on Broadway by 30 with Denzel? Like,
and honestly, too, can I say this? Now that I know, like I'm in the theater scene, I wouldn't want to do Broadway. 8 shows a week as the person I am now. You have no life, no social life because your work is in the evening. And like I like to be in bed. Don't get me wrong. If there was like a limited engagement of Midsummer Night's Dream with Denzel Washington, sign me up. Absolutely.
You're in.
But that now that I am who I am now, I mean, obviously, if I would have went to conservatory, I would be training for this. But now, oh no.
Yeah.
It's funny how life works that way.
Right? Yeah. It's interesting because we change, we grow, we evolve. And that's like a big idea. That's one of the big ideas I explore in the book is that the challenge of the journey to reinvention is to always be working towards alignment with your values, your passions, and your purpose as they shift.
Yeah.
Because those things will shift. We will grow. We will evolve. We will become different than we were last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so what would have made us happy 5 years ago may not make us happy anymore. What was a dream job 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago may not feel so dreamy anymore now because it's not aligned with my interests anymore. Maybe you would have hit a point where you're like, I don't like working nights. And this career is only about working nights. So, like, what do I do? This was my dream job, but it's not so dreamy anymore. And that's okay because this happens, but we don't always listen to that. We think this was the dream job. How dare I throw away a dream? How dare I quit? And we use those words like in the bad way, throw away a dream, quit something, and of course we know what they say about quitters. Quitters never win and blah, blah, blah. All these bad sayings that hold us back from quitting something we need to quit. And that's the problem. That means then you're not on the journey to reinvent. You're not staying in alignment with who you're becoming, who you are at any given moment. And it's so important. I think like it's okay not to be in love with something you were in love with 5 years ago and you've changed. And so you're not in love with the format of the role, of the job. You're like, not feeling that. Like new me, current me, 2023 me is not into that. Like I'm not feeling that. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. So it's cool that you're aware of that and that you can say that, aloud with confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you tell us about or some of the key people on this journey? The people what I call them in my book is guiding angels on your journey to reinvention. And these are people who can come into your life for an hour, a decade, or maybe they've been in your life all your life. But whatever amount of time they spent in your life, something they did changed your life for the better, guided you, moved you in a direction that you needed to be on. It could have been somebody you met for like one moment. You interacted with them for 1 hour, but something they said altered the course or the path of your life in a good way. And you're like, wow, thank you to that person. Can you tell us about maybe 1 or 2 people that you think played that kind of a role?
I feel like obviously like my parents are always so encouraging, and they're just whenever I need encouragement, I know to go straight to them because they know the right things to say. But I think it's so funny because I was just thinking about this a couple of days ago. I'm looking for that. Like, obviously, like that is in the Penn community. So you and every single instructor that I've had have been so instrumental. I think that program really I'm just really grateful for every single instructor I had.
Yeah.
Like, they saw things in me that I didn't even see in myself. Dr. Yoon, for example, like she was like, this is amazing. Like, I did an assignment. She was like, have you thought about getting your doctorate? And I was like, no, like that, like I'm not smart enough for that. But like, and then we had a one-on-one, and it no longer became about like the doctorate. It became about like just her speaking so much life into me and like what she sees in me. And it made me go, oh, I can do this. Like I do deserve to be here, because I had a lot of imposter syndrome at Penn that slowly faded away, but it was definitely there. So definitely my parents, Dr. Yoon, being able to like problem solve with you and every single faculty member there. But I am looking for, mentors in a way, or like people who can give me that alignment to like help me on the journey, because it does get very lonely when I just like talk to my mom about it, and she doesn't necessarily have like the knowledge or insight, but she does have the encouragement. But as far as like the practical things, and I'm being very specific because it's just that I love the idea of like woman and female entrepreneurs, especially if they're of color. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I mean, it tells me that this is something you want more of in your life. You want more guiding angels. And one thing I would offer is, I bet there are more guiding angels in your life than you think. It's a matter of like reflection and really thinking about who are those people that said, even as, again, it could be as little as like one small interaction. So in the book, I talk about one of these guiding angels. I open the book with this in the what do you call it, the prologue, yeah. What's the wrong one? And this is from a guiding angel on the journey. I say, sitting across from me at a restaurant in 2006, she said, when you talk about teaching math, you really light up. It's like there's an aura around you. I can't help but feel energized and drawn to you. You should find the way to radiate that aura all the time. And it chokes me up a little bit because it was such an important moment. And it didn't even hit me in 2006 when she said this to me. And it was somebody who was only in my life for 6 months, because of work stuff and all of that. And I didn't even know what aura meant when she said that. I was like, what is that word? But I thought, man, it must be something good. So I was like, all right, I'll have to look that up later. But I think I got the idea, but I didn't really know what it meant until later on, as I started to get more into tutoring. And those experiences kind of brought something out in me, like this light I'm radiating, this aura I'm radiating that I wasn't even aware existed or was a thing for someone to have. I didn't know. And so at the end, I close with the second half of that story. When Andrea told me I had an aura around me when I talked about teaching math, I didn't even know what aura meant. I sensed she meant something positive, and I thanked her, but I had to look up the word later. Little did I know that I was going to spend the next 16 years of my life on the journey to reinvention, unleashing that aura that she told me about. My journey to reinvention was barely underway, and Andrea seemed to already know what was going to happen. I'll never know for sure why she came into my life for only 6 months that year. I think she knew the real me even before I did. And in only the way an angel can, she planted a seed in me that day, way before I was ready to understand it. I've always carried it with me in case that it might make sense one day. I understand now. Thank you. And so that was such a short period of time that she was in my life.
Yeah.
That was one moment of those 6 months. But wow. It took a lot of years of reflecting to realize like what that meant. So I share that story with you because it might be there and it maybe hasn't activated yet.
Yeah.
A seed has been planted and it hasn't yet developed. And when it does, you'll probably remember who planted that seed in you, and you'll say, oh my goodness, I had many guiding angels. I have many seeds in me. Many seeds have been planted. They just needed time to, to grow. and blossom. But when they do, you'll know it.
You know.
And it took years before I realized that. And then it hit me, and I was like, wow, I totally get it. I heard it a few more times after, which then only kept reinforcing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this thing she talks about is so true. And I've learned so much from that, because that helped me understand that that's what I'm going after.
Yeah.
Like I want to live a life where that is the case all the time, where I'm always radiating that. So what does that mean? If it's not teaching math today, what is it? Is it this podcast? Is it coaching people? Is it working with a community of people who want to reinvent themselves? Whatever it is, like, as long as it's radiating the best of me and everything I can offer to people, then that's the thing I want to be doing.
Yeah.
But again, it came from reflection.
Definitely should reflect on that.
So I bet there's a few seeds in there that are growing, that are developing as we speak. Let's talk about things that something you do that you would credit with being a needle mover in your life. Maybe it's a habit, a practice, a strategy, something that you do that when you look back and reflect on what you've accomplished, you're like, wouldn't be able to do it without this habit, practice, or strategy. And I want to separate this a little bit from your belief, because we talked about your beliefs. So I know that is a big part of what powers you. And no doubt that is one of the answers. What's a strategy, a habit, a practice, a ritual? Let's focus on those types of things that you would also add to the list that, hey, this has made a massive difference in my ability to move through these chapters of my life.
The first thing that came to my mind was journaling. Like, I don't journal every day like I used to, but I definitely write down like milestones, whether it's like a good or bad, like in the sense of like something really cool happened. More so now, as I'm becoming an entrepreneur, like if someone sends me, like I keep emails or like I'll screenshot them, print them, and put them in the journal, because like that helps me. And so looking back at those journals from like back in the day before I was at Penn, having those people who were like, this is such an amazing idea, blah, 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 even though the idea has changed, like that's what kept me going, because there was someone who validated the idea and was like, you can do this. As like I said, it was such a huge dream, but the fact that they validated it and I had evidence of it and I kept it, like that kept me going. And then again, like journaling, even those moments that were challenging, knowing that like I overcame this. So when I used to journal, really short story, when I used to journal every day, I would go back to the day from whatever year, it's December, whatever, I would go to December, whatever of 2012. And I don't know, I would just be like, man, you've overcome so much, girl. Like you did it, like you're doing it. And so journaling is like the practical thing, I think, that helps me.
I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. We hear that a lot, right? But we don't always get the story behind it. Like this is specifically how it makes an impact in my life. And that's why you're sharing it. So where is your venture now? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, you took it through the Education Entrepreneurship Master's program at Penn, and catch us up. Tell us where it ended. Like when you graduated, which was not that long ago, just 6 months ago, even, right? 6 months ago or so. Tell us about where that venture was and then where it's been over the last 5-6 months.
So, went in with wanting to build a school. And what I loved about Penn, they were like, talk to, customers. So for me, that included, potential families living in shelters, principals, experts in the field. And it was through having conversations with them that I realized I didn't have the best solution for the customers. So we call it customer discovery. And it was through, the families and the students that my venture is what it is today, which is an after-school program. And I realized there were 3 things that needed to be addressed: the academic, the social emotional, and the family needs, which is why we have a 3-pronged after-school program. So the flagship part of it, the heartbeat of it, is our literacy enrichment program that uses Shakespeare to expand vocabulary, increase story analysis, build skill building. It's just been such an incredible experience. We just completed a 6-week pilot with a school in Washington Heights. And it was with 4th and 5th graders. And we did a production of Macbeth, but it wasn't necessarily about the production of Macbeth. It was about how could we use Shakespeare as a tool to increase literacy. And we did that through pre and post assessments. We do that also with storytelling. I kind of like did testimonials, interviews with the kids before the program to see where their knowledge was as far as Shakespeare, but also literacy. And then we just ended with our testimonials and interviews. And it's going well. Having meetings with shelter systems here in the city to have this as an after-school program within shelter. So the goal is to have the opportunity for kids in school to have this as an after-school program, but also if shelters want to opt in as well. So that's where we are. We just completed the pilot with the school in Washington Heights, as I mentioned, and I am currently doing the report. So there will be a final report because, again, yes, this is a fun theater program as far as the literacy enrichment part of it, but more than that, we're really interested. It's just a team of one right now. I'm really interested in seeing how, like, the data, like how students have expanded their vocabulary and literacy, because again, through one of the people who I met on the journey, is literacy was what saved him when he was homeless. The fact that he could read and he was literate and his peers weren't. And that's what was able to save him. And obviously we're going through a national reading crisis with kids in this city or nationally. And so just finding a different way. And so we're going to start testing the second half of that, which is the family program and the field trip program in the new year. So it's really exciting.
I love it because you're in the middle of it right now. You're bringing an idea to life that matters to you, and your smile says it all. Your smile says it all, like what it means to you and like the place that it holds in your heart, no doubt. Like it just lights you up. So that's super cool to hear. I'm so happy for you. I mean, I had the opportunity to get to work with you for that year when you were in the program, and it was just so cool to see how you were navigating all of the setbacks, all of the rejections. I mean, I remember that one call that I share with other people on the journey that are trying to bring a venture to life. And I share this story when we got on a call and you're like, I'm not sure I have anything to talk about. I just feel defeated. I've been knocking on so many doors, pitching this idea. And it's like, no one wants to help these kids, or no one cares that I want to help these kids, or no, what the heck is going on here? And in that session, you had a breakthrough and you came up with other ideas. You were like, well, then if it's not going to be this way or that way or the other way that I tried, I'm going to have to come up with 5 or 6 more ways to figure it out. And then you did, and you had a really cool breakthrough with a very unconventional approach. And it worked out. And I try to tell this to other students who are in similar graduate programs and entrepreneurs who are bringing an idea to life, that there is no one size fits all solution. There is no one way. In fact, chances are the first 3 ways will not work. So you better have a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th idea lined up so that, or be willing to come up with those so that you can give those a try, so that one of those can hit the nail on the head. But if you don't have those, you're not going to get it. And it was cool to see you go through that. And now to see how the idea continues to develop, and you're like, all right, launched, major experiment number 1 of this bigger idea you had. And now you're going to do part 2 of that. And you shared the pictures of me, which looks so cool. The students look so much. Was it mostly girls? Did I see mostly girls?
Yeah, it was mostly girls. And also too, I learned so I went in with these things obviously that I want to test, but I learned so much that I didn't even think about. Like the fact that me being a Black woman going into this school where the kids are predominantly Black and brown, like that affected them. They loved that. Like they were like, that gave me like some cool points for them. And then they also were just like, you're so cool. Like it made me think about, being more intentional, because like this, let's just be real, diversity isn't necessarily at the forefront when it comes to teaching artistry. It's just like, oh, you're an actor, you like to teach, come on in. But that reflects more so in having mostly like white women who are predominantly in the field of teaching artistry going into Black and brown like schools and shelters, wherever it may be. And I realized like it means something to those kids when someone looks like them is there for after school.
Absolutely. There's a great book that I read a long time ago. I'm not even sure I have it here. I think I borrowed it from the library back when I could not buy books so easily. I'm looking just to see in case it is here, but I don't see it here. But it is written by this guy, Daniel Coyle. This is the Culture Code, but the other book is called the Talent Code. And in that book, he talks about talent hotbeds that form around the world. Like he goes, why is it that there are such a insane concentration of really great baseball players in the Dominican Republic? Why is there such an incredible concentration of amazing soccer players in Brazil? Why is South Korea an incredible hotbed of women in golf talent, like female golf player talent? Why are Russian women so great at tennis? Like, why are there so many in the top 100? All these questions. And the list goes on of these hotbeds. And those are just the sports examples. There's others as well. And what he discovered was that there was a moment that triggered the hotbed. And this is where what you just said is so important, because he found that this is not an accident, that there's a lot of psychology and neuroscience to back this up as well. And it is that when someone sees someone who looks like them, comes from where they come from, or any of these, or a combination, or one or all of these. But if one of you hit one of these, at least you trigger something in them that creates the possibility. And that can't be achieved as easily when the person does not connect to you in any way prior to this interaction.
Yeah.
And so you boom, you trigger that for these students because you look like them. And that right there makes a difference. It's like when I talk to a mostly Latino group of students, or also Black and Brown, actually, when I used to teach in an inner city high school. Especially, and then I triggered, I didn't realize I had an accidental other one that we didn't expect, but it was that one of the kids at the moment was living in the same projects that I grew up in. And on top of it, he lived in the apartment. In the time he was living in the apartment above where I grew up.
Wow.
So he was like, wait a minute, you're from apartment 2D? And I'm like, yeah, dude. He's like, I live in 3D. And I'm like, I know. And I knew who lived in 3D. One of my best buddies in the building lived in 3D. He's like, I can't believe I come from the same building that you come from. And at this point, I've got my 2 bachelor's degrees, 2 master's degrees. I'm doing all this speaking and all this stuff. And they're like, this is nuts. Like, those connections matter. And so Daniel Coyle found in his research that that's what creates that. So for the Russian women tennis players, it was when they saw Anna Kournikova succeed on television.
Wow.
And that's why there was a generation of Russian women tennis players who all had that same grunt that she has, that really distinctive, that we all know she's screaming when she hits that ball. They all had that because they that was their role model, their possibility that opened the door. And one of the coolest things, by the way, he found, which I think is so important for what you're doing, is that he found that it has nothing to do with the facilities. It has nothing to do with the resources, the money that goes into it. When he went into that tennis academy that was so famous, he goes, you would have thought that it was abandoned. He goes, it looked so messed up. But then as you get closer, he said, as he walked in more, he goes, you could hear the grunt, that Anna Kournikova grunt, that scream that she does. And he was like, what is going on in here? Magic was happening. A talent hotbed was happening. And so it shows that we don't need schools to be fancy. So as you're thinking about your vision for your school, you don't need it to be the most well-funded. In fact, that could distract. And he found that high-tech, high-end facilities could actually be really distracting. Too many shiny things, too many distractions from the core work that needs to be done, which is on the court with a racket and a ball and a net. He's like, that's all you need.
Yeah.
That's really all you need. You don't need all the other stuff.
Yeah.
At certain levels. Once you get up to the highest levels, yes, you need the fanciest, the highest technology to get that millimeter of improvement, that little bit. But when you're starting at the bottom and building a talent hotbed, you just need like the basics, and all of that. And so he discovered that the most important factor in all of that was that Anna Kournikova existed. There was he found the same for a South Korean golfer who made it. And then there was an entire generation. He goes, and look at all the ages of this group, this cluster of successful women in golf from South Korea. They're all around the same age.
Wow.
So they all saw this person at the same time. And then the rest, is history. And it all happened. In Brazil, the proximity, the conditions. There were so many conditions that were actually based on poverty. And he goes, but they created the perfect conditions for these kids to learn how to play a way that later, when it's scaled to an entire pitch, an entire soccer field, transform the game. And everybody's like, how are they so freaking good? It's actually because of what they didn't have growing up. Yeah. The little bit of space that they had, the tight space, they didn't have the greatest shoes and all that. They had to learn to play a very different way. They didn't have grass either. Yeah. So they played on dirt. When you play on dirt, the ball moves quicker. When the ball moves quicker, you have to learn how to handle that. And then when you go on grass, you're like, this is so easy. This ball's going in slow motion. Like I'm like 5 miles ahead of this thing already. Yeah. So everything changes. The same goes for all fields. So as you're teaching, as you're teaching acting, as you're teaching the arts to these kids, know that what you discovered, what you experienced is not something that just happened and it was a nice thing that happened. It is something that will happen every single time you do that.
I love that.
Every single time. And then keep the other things in mind. You should check out, it's called The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. If I had the copy, I would just lend it to you right now. But I think it was one when I was borrowing the books from the library and I had to return them all. And so I don't have it here. It's a book I want to have though, because I want to have it around in case I want to reread it again. But super powerful. And I think for what you're going to do, what you're going to bring to life, like it'll be so helpful. Psacoya, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story, for sharing so openly, for telling us, like, what really happens. Like, I mean, this is what for me is so important about these interviews. We hear and we'll be reading about your school one day. But the thing is that while that'll be a great accomplishment and it'll be a great article, for those who want to do what you're doing, that article won't help them. They need to know like where it started. They need to know like the journey you walked way closer to the beginning so that they can get on it too and start that. And that's why for me, these stories are so important, because this is how we learn like where someone is, and to get it while you're going through it right now. Can't wait to have you back in a year and then hear the updates, and then a year after that and get the updates again. And as this thing is growing, because your perspective will change and you might not remember this moment the same. Well, you will, I guess, through your journal. Thanks to your journal, you will. But in your mind, you won't remember it the same way, because obviously you'll be living a new reality. A new version of you will have evolved. And so it's cool to be able to capture this so that people can learn from you right now in this moment. So thank you. I appreciate everything you shared with us.
Thank you, Roger, for having me. This has been fantastic. Thank you.
And is there anywhere we can point people, or is there anything you want to point people to that will help you? Like, how can this audience help you advance what you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. So you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can visit mytrinitynyc.org. It's just a landing page, but there is a button to subscribe to the newsletter, which is coming. The first one will be coming out soon to highlight and summarize this wonderful pilot we just did. And then I'm obviously on socials at Psacoya, Psacoya. You can also follow Trinity Theatre Group on Instagram. We do Friday pop quizzes that have become really fun on Instagram. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, all of these links, everything will be in the description and the show notes. So for anybody listening, you'll be able to find it there. And then, like we said, when this airs, your newsletter will probably be live. Yeah. So I just want to anyone listening in, I want them to know by the time they're hearing this, that newsletter will, so go sign up right away. Don't wait for it. It's coming. It's already going to be out and about. So awesome. Thank you again. Appreciate you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the School of Reinvention podcast. Again, I'm your host, Roger Osorio. If you're ready to start your journey to reinvention and want to walk the path with others, visit www.rogerosorio.com and go to the School of Reinvention to check out for yourself how a community-based coaching platform can help you begin your next reinvention. You can also go to rogerosorio.com to purchase my new book, The Journey to Reinvention, and receive some exciting bonuses. Until next time, make your day great.